Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn. Yeah.
Hey guys, and welcome back to Miss Mosaic with me, Jenny.
And me, Sara.
So today we have an episode of Bat Chat, which is all about sort of sexual taboos, and we talk about sort of how sexuality is perceived in different cultures and how they're treated.
Yeah, so we're kind of talking about like out of the ordinary stories, so kind of like binary sexual taboos that you find, or people that are like on the peripheral of sexual norms and how, you know, society has kind of pushed them out. So yeah, kind of bizarre stories that we've come across, things that you might have not heard of before. So Johnny, hit us with your story or your source of inspiration for this podcast.
So basically, the idea came about when I was watching an episode of Insecure on HBO. Some of you might know the show. It was written and created by the absolutely fabulous Sara, whom I have a total crush on. She's just so witty and funny.
Yeah, she's
so basically, without digressing, in the show there was a moment where this very young couple, a man and a woman, were just, you know, playing around. They're just having a chat, and they played a game. Well, not necessarily a game of Never Have I Ever, but something along those lines. And they talked about sort of past experiences and past mistakes. And at some point, the girl, or the woman, the young woman, rather, she was talking about how she once, back in the days, had a sexual encounter with a girl, and how she, you know, mess around with a girl. And, you know, they were sort of laughing about it and giggling about it. Oh, that sounds so sexy, that's so cool, and haha, giggle.
Well, the guy was giggling.
Laughter. Yeah,
both of
like...
them.
Both of them, yeah. It was sort of like a sexy tease kind of thing.
Okay, so was it just him and her? It wasn't like a group of people or anything?
No. It was just like on a date, just the two of them. It was very sort of intimate.
Okay.
And there was like a lot of sexual chemistry, sexual tension going on. And like a few minutes later, she was like, "Oh, you tell me a secret of yours," and he was like, "Well, actually, the same thing that you just said, I did that as well."
Oh my god!
And she was like, "What?" Like her face just fell. She was like, "No, wait, what
really?
happened?" Elaborate. It was like, oh, back in the days when I was younger, I used to I once had sex with a dude.
No.
And she was like, she was trying so hard to keep her shit together.
Oh my gosh.
And that just reminded me, like, because there's this huge discrepancy, this huge dichotomy between male homosexuality and female homosexuality, and how, you know, gays and lesbians are considered completely differently.
That just shocks me for a straight guy, just because I've heard a lot of gay men saying, like in documentaries, films, books, whatever, that for a gay man to actually have gay sex is a big deal. Like, it takes them a lot longer to lose their virginity than if it was like, you know, like a heterosexual couple or whatever. And like, obviously they partake in foreplay and stuff, but to do the real deal is a big deal for them.
So you mean it's a big deal for a straight male to be penetrated?
Basically.
Well, I don't know what exactly happened for that guy, whether it was sort of, you know, fellatio or whether, you know, there was penetration involved, but it was sex of some sort. There was definitely intimacy with the dude.
Okay.
What would you do if your you know, partner, if the one that you're dating, that you're starting to see, would say that? Would that freak you out? Would you be like, oh my god, he's actually gay?
I find that
because
so
that's how the girl
shocking.
reacted.
Really? So she thought he was like legit gay, like 100%.
Yeah, she was like yeah, she was like, oh, but that makes you gay. Like you had, but he was like, but I don't, you know, like literally the moment it was done, the moment, you know, like that same night, the moment we were done, I knew this is not for me. I've never done it again. I've never dreamt about it again. I've never fantasized about it. But for her, it was just like she constantly kept doubting him, and yeah, for her in her head.
That's interesting. I think it just because it is so rare for men to be so sexually fluid, it is a shock to the system. It's like, wow, you know, men have to have this perceived like kind of, you know, army of like machoism and like, no, I would never touch a man, I wouldn't even hold a man's hand, and then for them to do the full thing, it's like, wow, okay, that's shocking. I think for me personally, if a guy said that, a guy that I was dating, I would probably react the same way. I would think he was gay.
Really?
Yeah, I would. I would think, but just because it is such a massive deal and it's so rare for guys to do that, well, that we know of. I would just, I'd always have that seed of doubt in my head, like, is he really straight? Is he really into me? Or am I like a cover up for his family or to save face, you know, to his friends or whatever? It would breed some kind of paranoia
that's
for
so
me.
Interesting. Because for me, it's the exact opposite. Like, it's not that I'd be super thrilled, but I wouldn't be super thrilled to hear about any of his past relationships. But I think for me, I'm not going to say, you know, if you haven't done it, you don't know it. You know, like, how do you know that you don't like men, that you're not gay if you haven't tried it out? I'm not going to go down that path because it's dumb. But that said, the fact that he did have sex once and was like, do you know what, this is not my cup of tea, sort of means to me that he's 100% straight. Like, he tried it and he said no. Like, and if he was ashamed of it, if he's trying to sort of, you know, if I'm just a farce and, you know, part of his sort of whole straightness charade that he's playing, he wouldn't have admitted to it in the first place. He would have, like, kept it a dark secret.
Maybe, yeah, that's true, because it would have been a bit like taboo, a bit scary to admit, because whenever you're like guilty of something, you don't really like to be so loud about it.
Yeah.
But I think I'd always be
like, he was so casual about it on the show. He was like, yeah, I had sex with a guy, and it was just so funny.
I think I'd always be on the lookout for feminine, like, traits. I don't know why. I'd just be like, if he like flicks his hand out, or if he goes out
like,
buying
I
handbags.
love me some Barbara Streisand. Wait, what?
Yeah. I'd literally be like, oh my god, no, I can't do this. Something's going on here. But yeah,
that's so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the past is in the past to a certain extent, and you know, it isn't nice to hear about, you know, if you're in love with someone, about their previous partners or whatever. But I don't know. For a boyfriend to say that he had sex with another man, it would just, I don't know. I would just be like, you might be bisexual, or, you know, you might be gay, or it would definitely make me think about it. I wouldn't be cool about it. I wouldn't be like, oh, okay, well, he's definitely 100% straight. It would definitely plant some seeds of doubt.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Would you rather want to know the details though? Like, you know, say he tells you, and then would you be like, okay, you know what, I don't want to know anything more about this? Or would you be like, okay, what was it? Was there penetration? Did you receive a blow? Like, would you want to know the details?
Yeah, I think I would.
Would you?
Yeah, because when you get a bit of information, you're kind of curious. You're like, this might hurt me, but I still want to know more. Like a kind of sadomasochist kind of thing. Like, I want to know the full thing, even though it's going to hurt me.
Even though you know it's bad for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like a car crash, you just can't get away from it and, you know, walk away from it.
What about you?
I don't know. I think that I wouldn't want, I wouldn't want to know, because I know this is going to haunt me. Like, because what if it's like some beautiful man, like, who looks like Jesse Williams? Like, that would just ruin me. Like, someone who's so much prettier than I am. I think that would literally destroy my self-confidence.
Yeah.
But I'd like to think that if my partner...
I like how you like to think that you're like competing with men as well. Like, you're all on the same spectrum. You're like so fluid with that. You're like, yeah, we're all one. I'm basically competing with men as well. We're like competing for the same man.
No, listen, there is like, if you look at like really beautiful women, you can clearly be like, okay, this is going to be like, even if in a relationship, this is why I don't like dating like pretty men, because I just wake up feeling like, this motherfucker is so pretty. Like, yeah.
It is a bit intimidating.
Yeah, it definitely is.
So, do you feel like that if you were to date like a good-looking guy? Would it put you off? Would you rather date down or date on your level? Really?
I would definitely want to date on my level, because I have very, very low self-esteem anyway.
Aww.
So I'm definitely not going to get into a relationship where he looks like, where he's just so good-looking, but also because there's so many factors. It's the fact that he's prettier than me. It's the fact that he can do better than me. There's girls that match him better than I do. It's also the fact that he probably is quite vain and puts a lot of effort into his looks, which I'm not. I don't do that. So it'd be just weird to be with someone who does.
I know what you mean.
That makes sense.
I do like the rugged look as well, but not just that. Like, I don't know. Just a guy that's way too good looking would. It'd kind of make me a bit sick. Like, oh no, I just. I wouldn't like it.
Yeah, there's something about perfection that's very off-putting, I find.
Yeah.
I think was it you who said that you like your men damaged?
Oh my god. Possibly, yeah. That maybe
Yeah,
in the past
that's
past me.
Yeah.
What damaged,
I
like,
definitely-
facially, or...
all in all senses, emotionally, physically, in all senses.
Oh, Jenny, you're setting yourself up for, like, bloody Quasimodo to come knocking on your door. It is kind of intimidating, but then if he's got, you know, a great personality and you guys are compatible, then yeah, it's not really an issue.
That makes it even worse.
No, it doesn't.
Because
Like,
not only is he good looking 10 on 10, he's also funny. What the
you
fuck?
found the holy grail of guys, man. Like, that's good.
It
You're
doesn't
blessed.
exist. Let me just tell you, that shit doesn't exist, okay? If you see someone who's 10 on 10 on all things, you've got a serial killer on your hands, so just run.
Oh my God.
Right? Take your
Stop
shoes
it.
and run.
Take your shoes. Don't go barefoot. Main bit of advice. No, I don't know. I've still yet to come across a guy that's like just amazingly good
Just
looking.
nice.
And oh well, that as well, yeah. And like
Yeah.
how that would make me feel. But yeah.
I'd be okay with just meeting like a 7 on 10, like on all borders. Just that would make me crazy happy.
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Yeah.
Set your standards real low. But yeah, no, I think back to the topic about
Yes.
having a semi-gay boyfriend. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'd have to eventually get over it if, you know, I thought he was the one, and if he was really understanding about my past. You know, everyone does have a past. That is the thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing you're going to always have to work through in a relationship. And if you trust someone, and if you want mutual respect and love, that's something that might be a hurdle, or you might have to come across. So if he was worth the fight and worth being in a relationship with, I would overlook it. I really would. But obviously it would plant some kind of doubt there. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of this conversation that we have, you know, because with women, when they sort of come out and say, oh, I've had experiences with a girl before.
Yeah, it's a lot more acceptable.
And, you know, I had that experimental phase. It's so much more acceptable. It's even sort of fetishized to a certain extent.
Like, oh, I wish I could
whereas
join in, or I wish I could look, or do you know?
Yeah,
what I mean?
exactly. Yeah. Like, why didn't you invite me to the party? And like in those instances, it never takes away from their femininity, from their womanhood. Whereas when men come out and say that they've had experiences with another man, it automatically makes, well, you know, even when they come out as gay, it automatically
It's like a turn off.
undermines their masculinity. It makes them less of a man. It makes them, just in your head, not, you know, actually makes them, but it just in your head, it makes them more feminine or effeminate, which is very well, dumb.
You think it's dumb?
we've-
Okay. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I don't think that being gay is in any way in contradiction to being a man. You can still be a strong, powerful, and protective, and just, you know, all those things that
of course.
that a man, like, because we've created this false idea of hyper masculinity that is just really based on nothing.
And you can be like very camp and straight, like it's not really linked.
Absolutely.
But I think it's just the way
but
that
what
I've been conditioned to think. I'd probably be like, oh my god, I'd be
Oh,
extra
absolutely.
cautious, like, oh my god, is he really feminine? Does he have loads of girl best friends? And is he, like, I'd be just extra, like, you know, what, you know, keeping a lookout for those kind of things, just out of silliness, because I'd be pretty paranoid.
Just out of curiosity, what do you think makes a man sort of masculine?
That's kind of subjective, isn't it? I think
Very. It's a
yeah.
very cultural thing as well.
Yeah, it is. What makes a man masculine? Don't know. I guess.
Because, like,
Yeah, carry on.
yes, go on. Because in South Asian culture, especially sort of in South Indian culture, you have this thing of, oh, a man has to have a moustache, like that makes a real man. If you can't grow a beard,
Oh, really?
that's not a man. And, you know, other things like, oh, he has to be like big shoulders and like physically really well built, which is something that I, you know, subconsciously have adopted as well, that kind of thinking. Where I see someone with, like, you know, who's quite well built, and I'm like, oh yes, that's a man.
Oh, really?
Yeah, definitely.
I think.
Um,
I don't know. I think masculinity, it has a lot to do with kind of being the, you know, the protector and the kind of the guider and the supporter and just kind of like the strong person, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. I mean, God knows I've been in relationships where I've been the shoulder to cry on constantly. So but I guess when people say to me like, what's manhood for you, and that's probably it, like kind of being being strong, being that person who protects you and who cares for you and who's there for you. And it is an important part of like, it is an attribute I look for in a guy.
Same here, like although I know that's not exclusively what manhood means, but yeah, when I look for a partner, I do look in someone who sort of can stand his own ground, who, you know, in worst case scenarios can protect me, and you know, that whole, you know, a strong will comes into play there again. Yeah,
I mean, you can be courageous and not be physically strong. Do you know what I mean? Like
you'll just get your ass kicked.
Well, that's fine. Do you know what I mean? I would much rather a man who stands up for me, but he's weak and he gets his ass kicked in front of me, and I'm like, okay, cool. At least he stood up for me. He didn't run away and like use me as a shield, and then just like,
oh Jesus, oh my God.
I'd much rather that. Like, it's got nothing to do with like physical strength at all. For me, like a man that is courageous and like can protect me and is strong as me, or even stronger, you know, mentally and emotionally, is a win for me. And I find that really attractive. As I've sort of
grown older, I also appreciated when a man can just be sensitive. I'm not going to say it makes him sexy when he cries, but the fact that he can cry and that the fact that he can fist up to it is a very attractive feat.
Not all the time though.
No, not for all kinds of shits, but like just the fact that a man can admit, I don't know.
Milk. Yeah. No, yeah, I know. It is attractive, like to see the sensitive side as well, but there has to be a balance for sure.
And it's good to sort of see it change, especially when you. Like, I grew up listening to a lot of hip-hop and rap music just because of my brothers. So, when I grew up, like, in the 90s, like, the noughties especially, you had a lot of... How do I put this? Shit music?
Yeah.
You know, you had a lot of girls and thongs and, like, you know, you had a lot of homophobic slurs and lyrics and just... And this sort of, this hyper-masculinity that was promoted, that was so false, but you had this idea of, you know, I got a big dick, I can do this, and I got a gun, and, you know, fuck your pussy, like, all that kind of, like, really dumb shit.
I like how you slipped that in right at the end. Oh my gosh, yeah.
And it's good to sort of, these days, see a slight shift in that, you know, people embracing artists that don't fit into that particular category of like the gangster rapper. But you've got like more sensitive people like Childish Gambino or
I've seen a few rappers wear like nail varnish as well.
Oh really?
What do you think about men wearing nail varnish?
I'm not a fan.
Really?
I mean, if it's like a clear coat, then that's cool because I'm
a clear coat.
Like, if you go to a manicure, maybe you get that. I don't know. But,
I don't like...
It just reminds me of Marilyn Manson. I don't know. It reminds, like, automatically, because I'm an 80s child, it reminds me of sort of goth, and that's just not my cup of tea.
Yeah. I have seen rappers with, like, black nail varnish as well.
Really?
Yeah, pretty strange. But yeah, not my cup of tea. I barely look after my nails nowadays, so if a guy is, like, more groomed than me, especially with his nails, like, having, like, French manicure and stuff, nah. Gross.
Yeah, this is really weird, like, it's such a thin line for me, because they have to have clipped fingernails, so it has to be clean and short.
Definitely.
But it can't be too perfect, because that's just off-putting as well, so it has to be that fine line of... You need to make an effort, but you can't look like you make an effort.
Yeah,
like that kind of
like, you know, like buff your nails and have like a shiny kind of tint to it, and that's a bit pink. No, for me that would be a bit off-putting.
I've literally never been to a mani-pedi, and the fact that he would have gone, or he goes regularly, that would be just...
Yeah, it's like, spend your money on something else, honey. That's, like, unnecessary.
Go watch football, man! Yeah. Go buy some beer!
Yeah, no, that is really off-putting. Like a guy, like, getting a full body wax, and you're like, you barely even get the time to shave. It's like, no, don't do that. You're making me look bad.
Yeah, I do like my men, not hairy, but, like, I don't want to have a werewolf, but...
That reminds me, have you seen Tokyo's Genderless Youth? It's this video on Vice.
On Vice, yeah, I've seen I've seen like the
What do
video
you think
program on
about
YouTube,
them?
but I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, okay. But yeah,
What is it about?
it's basically about this Tokyo youth movement rejecting the idea of like fashioning, like kind of making fashion a defining point of sexuality. So yeah, and it just shows like guys and girls and how like a lot of the girls have really androgynous looks and you can't really tell if they're guys or girls, and that's the way they want to kind of express themselves. And then there was this guy who he was wearing a dress, and he was like, yeah, at first my parents were really shocked, and but then they started to understand the artistic motives behind it, and that I don't really like to be put in a category, and it's a lot more fun and free being this way. And he's like, yeah, everyone should be like this, just wearing whatever they want. It's visually much more exciting. And it just made me think, like, I've always wanted to dress like a man as a social experiment. Like, I've always wanted to do it. Always.
What do you mean when you say I want to dress as a man? Like real, like with the whole, like put on a beard?
Yeah,
and
like a
just,
prosthetic, like face thing,
Really?
like a beard. Or like even as an old man or an old woman, I've always wanted to do it. Just like walk into the office.
Oh yeah, an old woman, I would do that any day. Oh my god, yeah.
But in terms of like gender, would you ever do like a man, an old man, a young man, just to see how it feels? Like get broad shoulder pads. Like wear like braces, a tie, like a proper stylish traditional like manly look, just to see the kind of reactions you'd get.
Not really. I mean, if I could, I would like to be like a white man.
Oh my
just
god,
to
really?
See, like how much shit I can get away with, just like because it's the best thing that you can be in
life,
in the world, like a white man. Like life is just so good. But no, I really don't have. I mean, it's not like I dress very feminine anyway. Do you know what I mean? So, I mean, I guess I wear skirts and stuff.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, you're not like super feminine, but you can be.
And also, like, because I've got 2 older brothers, so I always used to wear the hand-me-downs until I was like 14, 15.
Oh, really?
So, I have that kind of, like, I know what it's like to dress like a boy, because that's what I used to do for the first 15 years of my life.
Oh.
I've never really had that, I wonder what it's like to dress as a boy. I did it, so it's cool.
Done that, been there.
I got that, yeah, exactly.
Aww.
Literally got the t-shirt.
Oh. Yeah, no, I've always wanted to do it just for fun, just to see what people say. I've always been into like acting and like dressing up. I don't know why.
Oh right, yeah.
But yeah,
because I'm sure it changes the way that you just carry yourself.
Yeah, and it's always easier being something that you're not. Do you know what I mean? If you're acting as something
that you don't have to be.
Yeah, so you're like, what? I don't really have any
yeah.
rules. No one can judge me for this because it's not really me.
Yeah. And if it isn't working out, I can just change back. So you just like, you're so free and liberated in a way.
But people in Tokyo are so freaking trendy and like literally style goals. They are literally the best when it comes to fashion, in my opinion. But yeah.
Alright, next year's trip to Japan, let's book it.
Let's do it.
So the next thing that we want, or that I want to talk about, is the role of transgenders in South Asia, specifically on the Indian subcontinent.
Okay.
Growing up as a South Asian in the Western world, you get a lot of shtick for, coming from a place that's very backwards thinking, and, you're being criticised for the archaic views that South Asia promotes, apparently. But to be honest, that is just like the biggest load of bullshit.
Okay.
Because if you've ever made the effort to actually look into Indian history, you will find out that it's actually like we were progressive way before the rest of the world were in so many issues. Mm-hmm. In fact, if you go to temples in India, you can find so many statues that are proof to how embracing we were as a culture to to different sexes, to different sexualities, to gender fluidity. Especially.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a really, really rich and proud culture of transgenders. We've always had it.
Okay. So do you know how long that dates back till, or is that's not like a modern?
We have proof of it, like back to the Hindu scriptures.
Okay.
We've got really prominent transgenders there. But before I go on to that, so basically these days you have the transgenders in South Asia. They're called hijras.
Okay, hijras.
And they are officially recognised as a third gender in South Asia, including India, Pakistan and Bangladesh.
Oh, no way.
So these people are considered neither male or female, but a third gender.
Okay.
So basically what happened is in 1994 in India and in 2009 in Pakistan, they got their official recognition as a third sex. In 2013, transgender people in Pakistan were given their first opportunity to stand for election, which is pretty massive.
Oh, wow.
And earlier this year, Pakistan also issued its first third gender passport. So instead of marking their sex as male or female, they'd have an X,
Okay.
which stands for, which would mark, that they're transgender, which makes traveling for these people, for transgenders, so much easier because there wouldn't be any contradiction between
Oh,
their
right, yeah, of
appearance
course.
and, what it says on the passport. So,
That's interesting.
but actually what we have now is a step back to what we had early in the days. So just going back to what you asked me, so in the Kama Sutra, there is mentioning of performance of fellatio by feminine people of a third sex. So the mentioning of a third sex was already back then. The Ramayana, which is one of the two holy scriptures in Hinduism, it also has it mentions a group of hijras that followed Lord Rama, which is a god. And these hijras were awarded by the god for their devotion and loyalty, so they had a special place in that book. In the Mahabharata, which is the other holy book, the holy scripture, actually one of the heroes of that epic, Arjun, transformed himself into a transvestite because he can shape shifts.
Okay.
So they were never like a bad thing. They weren't an evil as they are considered by certain communities now. They were just a part of community, just as a male or a female. They were just as legit as anyone else.
Oh, wow. That's very interesting to see that they were like so deeply embedded in like the Hindu culture and
Yeah.
they were already established as their own sex even back then.
Yeah.
Like, that's shocking. For a lot of people are like, oh, the transvestite community is a very modern like phenomenon and blah blah blah.
Exactly.
But it's actually, they've been around for ages.
It's always been there. Yeah. And why wouldn't they be? It's not like people just.
Yeah, because
the 21st century came along. They were like, you know what, I need to be different. I need to.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people think that like
new.
It's a social construct of like damaged society or like. Consequence of people of abuse or just things like that. So it's interesting
Evil
to hear
of
that.
modern life.
Yeah, because a lot of people are like, oh, you're
definitely.
not born gay or you're not born a transvestite. But there's evidence in place to show that actually, it's the contrary. So that is really interesting.
Exactly. They've always been there, and they're such an important part and aspect of the South Asian culture, but that just sort of gets glossed over. And one of the reasons why it gets glossed over is that, I don't want to, point fingers on any, but the part of stigmatization of that community came along with the British Raj, actually.
Oh, right, okay.
So it was during the British Raj, they implemented a law called the Colonial Law in 1897, and that declared all transgenders and eunuchs as criminals.
Wow.
So that whole community was labelled as a criminal tribe, which then led to stigmatization, which is still there these days.
Wow, and then they say that brown people are primitive and archaic.
Yeah.
It's like, well, honey, do your history research and you'll see.
Yeah, exactly. Like, India was so free before the British Raj came. Like, people would walk around naked. There was no shame. People would have sex. And homosexuality, transsexuality was such a vital part of our culture. And then, I don't want to sound like a dick. I don't want to sound like anti-Britain.
Yeah.
Because I'm not anti-Britain.
No.
But
it's interesting to know, definitely. And it's good to know, the history and, how societies have changed because of colonialism, definitely. And
because then came sort of the concept of sort of decency and, proper conduct.
So you're saying that's a bad thing?
What, decency?
Yeah.
Well, do you know what? They didn't hurt anyone. They used to have sex with... They didn't rape anyone. It wasn't like they were going around raping people. They were just doing their own thing. They were just living free. And a concept of decency is so subjective and fluid.
Yeah, it is.
So, obviously, colonialism has so many faults and so many... It's just made up of bad things. But yeah, one of the things that happened is that India was robbed of partly of its cultural identity, and it's still suffering from it, and these marginalized communities, they are the ones that suffer the most.
No,
homosexuals and transgenders. But it's important to know, I think, where we come from and what our actual history is.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, and obviously I can imagine by criminalising transvestites, you make them more vulnerable and more prone to like, you know, human trafficking and prostitution and
exactly,
you know, really horrible elements of the community and society.
So you had these people that were actually part of the Mughal court and that were employed as advisors to the king. They were then forced to sell themselves because they didn't have any other means to survive. Because society sort of cast them aside and made them criminals, so they didn't have another choice but actually become criminals.
Oh, that's horrible. Well, that reminds me actually of something. We probably spoke about it in the previous podcast. So it's further up north, still in Asia, a bit further up north, yeah. Basically, so for A-level English, I wrote a poem about a phenomenon in Afghanistan, and I drew inspiration from a documentary that I watched. Don't know if you've seen it, The Dancing Boys of Afghanistan.
Yeah, I have seen it, yeah.
Right, it's absolutely horrendous. Like, it's just the stuff that nightmares are made of. So, so I was always kind of like fascinated with the, you know, the consequences and effects of censorship and extremism, and especially in relation to like, you know, repressing sexual desires and things like that. And I wrote my dissertation on like the effects of media censorship in the Middle East and how it affects people on like a psychological level, you know, like makes them horny or whatever. No, I'm joking, I didn't come out with that conclusion, but yeah, basically what it is essentially is hundreds of Afghan boys are trained to entertain male audiences, and then they're traded for sexual favours among like warlords and businessmen, so really high up people. And they often wear like makeup, women's clothes, and even, you know, like fake boobs, and sometimes they have their face covered, and they just dance like really sexually in like a hall full of like maybe 100 men. It's the most bizarre thing ever. And even though it is actually illegal, like Afghan authorities have literally failed to put a stop to the practice. And it's basically from the fact that women aren't allowed to dance in public, so they get kind of like orphans or boys from poor families who are desperate for some money to take part in these dances. And so I watched an interview of one of these boys, and he said like initially he was happy doing it because it brought in a lot of money for him, and he actually loved dancing. For the family, like he loved dancing, and he was like showing off his dance moves, and he was like pretty good. And then he was like, it just started to get really dark when, you know, he was getting sexually harassed, and you know, a lot of boys do get kidnapped and raped, and it's really dark and horrible.
So basically they just dance, that is part of the contract, but am I guessing like for more money you can have sex with them, or how does that? So basically they go into prostitution, or a lot of the times it is against their will, so they do get raped or sexually harassed or kidnapped. So I mean, for me it is kind of a testament or kind of like proof that if you sexually repress people, or if you create like these limitations,
it does turn people into really, you know, dark alleys, and it makes them desperate, and that it does, because it's the forbidden fruit, and it's like, okay, let's create our own version of it, even if it's really wrong and twisted. So that was, I don't know, they're
just going back to the idea of decency, because for them I mean, I'm sure they don't think, because no villain ever thinks of themselves as villains, right? They always think what they're doing is right, and the men in that, I remember like seeing a few interviews with men, they think that they're right because they, you know, they're not having sex with women, which is not allowed, and they're
preserving their virginity as well, which is something they really care about. But it's like, what the hell? That's completely,
it's like such a twisted idea of decency and sort of like justifying what you're doing, not seeing what you're doing to these innocent little kids.
No, it's disgusting. It's paedophilic, and it's absolutely horrendous. It's weird though. It's like, how are you thinking that is like less sinful than sleeping with a woman? I don't see how that makes sense in any way. But it's probably because it's punishable by death, probably, like adultery. And like fornication. Oh, definitely. You can get stoned out there. So they'd much, likely do that than actually sleep with a woman.
It is horrendous. And the fact that that's what's most distressing about this whole thing. Not just, the dancing boys, or, the fact that people get stoned for adultery. Just the fact that people use things like religion or the Sharia law and just add things that are not
Yeah.
in the actual original scriptures, and that they just read it with such hatred
Yeah.
and such
and completely against human rights and compassion and love and everything that
Yeah.
religion is meant to be about, which is bizarre
Yeah.
to me. But yeah, I mean, the message we can probably take away from this is just live and let fucking live. Like, if
yeah,
people want to
exactly, yeah.
live as transvestites, if people want to live as like green goblins in their dungeons, like, let them do whatever they want to do. If it's not harming you, you know, just let people do what they want to do. If it's not illegal, if it's not hurting anyone, it's fine.
Do you know what? It's interesting is that it's almost always about sex in some shape or form. Like, all the evils
That's
that are in the
true.
world always lead back to sex, and it's like, I get it, it's probably pretty good sex, like, whatever, but is it really worth that much? Like, you've got 10 seconds of enjoyment, probably, and you're ruining everyone around you and yourself for those 10 seconds. Like, I just don't get
10
it.
seconds, oh god.
Well, if you can last longer, that's good for you, but
No, I know what you mean. I think it's just another form of addiction. It's just like, you know, how people use drugs and just other addictive factors. I guess it's people's kryptonites, and it is something that really does rule the world. It is.
It is, yeah. People say it's money, but it's not money. Like, even the money is just to get the sex most of the times.
That's weird. Oh, you're putting a whole different twist to this. I didn't think of it like that.
Mind blown.
Mind blown. Freaking blown.
Yeah, I guess the conclusion is just to sort of live and let live. And, you know, as long as you're not getting hurt, as long as you're not hurting others, just chill the fuck out.
Yeah.
You'll be so much happier. You'll be I promise you will be so much
promise.
happier if you stop getting angry about everything and stop criticizing and getting into other people's business in their bedrooms. Just do you. You'll be so much happier. Trust me. You'll have so much time and energy on your hands as well.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely.
You'll finally have time to, you know, do the garage that you've been putting on for weeks and months and years.
Of course.
If
yeah,
you
that old
stop
thing.
rallying against homosexuals.
Exactly. But here's the question for you. Like, if...
Hit me.
Okay, do you reckon in Saudi Arabia, they're like... because they're so sexually repressed or whatever, do you reckon that is the actual truth deep down? Like, are the residents of Saudi Arabia happy and, like, in happy relationships with their, like, you know, their husbands or their wives, or are they actually, like, sexually repressed and, like, rampant sexual deviance? Like, what do you reckon is the real deal? Like, is it a better society than ours? I don't know. Like, what is it?
No, I don't know. No, I don't think so, because I'm not saying that people need to be adulterous to be happy. That's not what I'm saying. But to be said, you're not allowed to, you know,
I don't get
premarital
that.
sex.
I don't...
Or to tell them you can't, you know, look at other women dancing. You can't, you know, try out what your sexuality is. To have that strict limitation that is then, you know, it's punishable by death, that just makes you go crazy. It's like being in a rat in a cage.
Yeah, and
like,
you can't have
there's
the rat
no way.
food, yeah. No.
I think you need to give people choices, and you need to give them their own will, and just a freedom of choice, because that's what living life is about. You need to be able to choose and make your own mistakes.
Definitely, I agree. I think taking away a human's freedom is the worst thing you can do. That's why prison is, like, you know, one of the worst forms of punishment.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just
yeah.
something I've always been curious about. Why is sex so... Why are we made to feel like by us, you know, being kept away from sex, which is supposedly so dangerous, actually a good thing for us? Like, what is it saving us from ourselves? Like, why is that, like, a main thing? You know, like you said, kind of like sex is a big monopoly and it's like what rules the world. Why is it that way, you know?
I feel like it's just like some horny little shit that could never get laid because he's so fucking ugly. And he was like, you know what? I won't have anyone get this if I can't get this. If I can't get laid, no one can get laid. So, you know, here are the fucking laws that I will now say
That
are
is
Sharia
great,
law.
yeah.
Because because it's sex as well. It's been like, even between a man and a woman, it is being stigmatized. You know, even within Catholicism, it's like, you know, you only have sex if you want to have children. If you don't want to have children, don't do the sex. And it's just like, just chill. If it gives them enjoyment, and if they don't spread any diseases. What's your problem?
I mean,
like, don't get in their business.
I think that's what I've always thought, but I think in terms of, you know, addictions, once you get a tiny bit, it's like you're gone kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, my understanding of religion is kind of like, don't make your decisions based on lust. And, you know, because lust, you know, sometimes causes you to get heartbroken, or and then they always, you know, in religion you kind of they want that distinction between, you know, animals and humans. So, you know, we both, you know, are animals that do have sex, whereas but humans have like the whole emotional and psychological aspect that we have to really look out for and protect. And so maybe that's another argument, and that's probably why sex is bad for us. I don't know. Like, I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. And I don't think that it's bad in that way. I just think that it is true. Like, sometimes for some people it can lead to you know, a broken heart, or, you know, catching STDs or whatever. And that's true, but I just feel like you need to be allowed to make a mistake. Yeah, it's part of life. You need to be allowed to make the mistake. Of course, what is
because if you tell them that they're not allowed to, even if you just raising a child, right? If you tell them they're not allowed to do this, they will find a way to do this. Because I was a child, I did that as well. When I was told I'm not allowed to do something, I will make sure that I find a way to do that.
Yeah.
So it's so much better to just be like, okay, you know what? You are allowed to do it, but let's just discuss it. Let's talk about it. You know, don't be just ruled by.
I think with a lot of people, there's like the rule, but there's no explanation behind it. And I feel like there needs to be more conversation behind it. So even though religion might be, you know, it might have kind of the best kind of intentions, and it might be there to protect you from getting psychologically hurt or whatever, there's no explanation there. So then people are just left with that rule, and then they're like, oh my God, I feel so repressed, I feel so trapped, and religion is just like killing me. And then they end up doing all these weird sexual things that they shouldn't do.
Like, literally, they hit like college.
Yeah.
Like the moment they move out of the house, and they're just like wild bunnies.
Yeah.
It's basically, I just feel like, you know, and this is not just, this is about any sort of, you know, be that drugs or alcohol or whatever. It's just like focus on education rather than just putting up rules that don't make any sense, that are just sort of vague and based on nothing. Just educate your kids, educate your community about why.
Yeah.
Because if you tell your kids, you know, not to have sex with everyone because of STDs, they'll be a bit more careful.
Yeah, that's true.
And they won't do it with any Tom, Dick and Harry.
Yeah.
If you just tell them, oh, you can't ever do this, I will kill you, they'll be like, all right,
fuck you.
Let's see.
Yeah. It's interesting.
But yeah, it's definitely interesting how you know, different cultures treat it today, but also how different cultures used to treat it back in the days.
No, definitely.
All right, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's all
Shall we
wrapped
wrap it
up.
up?
Wow, we digressed a hell of a lot, but it was an interesting one.
Did.
Covered a few topics.
But yeah, guys, thanks so much for staying with us.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
And sticking through.
Yeah, so I mean, once again, if you've got any ideas for topics, or if you just want to diss us, cuss us for our opinions, that's absolutely fine. You can email us at mostmosaic@gmail.com.
Exactly.
And tweet us at most_mosaic. Yeah, check us out.
Guys.
We're actually more active on our Twitter now, so yeah, enjoy reading our tweets.
We are trying.
Thanks to Jenny.
To up the Twitter game. But yeah, hopefully see you in 2 weeks' time with a brand new episode and some brand new chit chat. And until then, have a good time.
Yep.
And don't do anything crazy, guys.
No. So see you next week. Bye.
All right. Bye.